And here we are.
You're on in 2 and 1.
And we are live on Facebook. That's good. Well, hello everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my friends, depending where you are. Where I am, it's 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on April the 5th, 2020. I am Emily Windsor Craig, and this is History Reset, brought to you each Saturday by People's Internet Radio in Ireland and Radio Act TV in Jerusalem, Israel. I hope to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media refuse to discuss, not even divulge. This program is a public service, but please donate to People's Internet Radio to keep the people's truth coming at you without commercial adverts. Tonight's History Reset show is asking the question, all right, do we have enough information to do what we need to do, or are we grasping at straws? Really, really. And I had my attention grabbed. You know how I'm always trying to come to a single explanation of the whole situation we're in. Some people are interested in the politics, and some people are interested in medical, and some in philosophy, and some in religion, and some in policing, and so on. All right. And I try to synthesize a way of seeing it that grabs the whole thing. And I found this in Voyagers 2, which I keep referring to because it is a version of history that ties together all the other holy books, the Bible, Sumerian cuneiform tablets, the Oahspe, the Urantia book, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. This ties everything together. And now, if I can see this, my arms are too short. Okay. This book, Voyagers 2, comes to us through the authority of the galaxy. Just as the El Anu Treaty, which was part of the Emerald Covenant treaties, came to us through the authority of the galaxy. And those are the people that I've been very hard on because they allowed the idea in the El Anu Treaty that there are superior races and inferior races, and it's okay for the superior races to call the inferior races, and that started all the commercialism, yaketa smacketa. Well, here is the historical background of the factions that exist at the galaxy level, which none of our earthbound holy books deal with. The Anunnaki races have had an intimate relationship with human evolution for many millions of years, and unfortunately, this relationship has rarely demonstrated peaceful co-evolutionary objectives. The Anunnaki race identity includes a society of different interstellar races, all of which have one thing in common. They were originally created by and through a self-proclaimed anti-Christiac fallen angelic collective called the Anu Elohim. Within the original text of this book, no differentiation was made between the Elohim, feline hominid, human Christos founders race, and the fallen, and put that fallen in quotes, will you? Anu Elohim, aquatic ape cetacean collective that took an anti-Christiac stance against their Elohim kin 250 billion years ago. All right. What is that telling you? That this galaxy is run by factions. Okay? Is this a surprise? That the galaxy is run by factions? Okay? That the planet is run by factions? That divide and conquer has been in treaties since the El Anu Treaty after the Lyran Wars? All right. Well, if we want to defeat the divide and conquer and treachery and protection rackets behaviors, we're going to have to, first of all, define them. Let's define how those behaviors work. Let's look at academia, and the peer review publishing practice of peers only allowing to be published what they already agree with, so that new information is kept out. Okay. Let's look at the allopathic medical profession. It has peer-reviewed publications so that all alternative methods are held out. It's based on druggery, which is sorcery, all right? And it has as its basis in rules top-down policies and top-down practices and top-down doctrines and top-down procedures. All right? So when you go to the doctor, who you're talking to is not a healer. Who you're talking to is a partisan for a medical point of view in which the human body is a thing to be manipulated by druggery, visits, procedures, and tests. All right. Is that what encourages healing? Sometimes. In my case, it has not helped me one whit. Okay. In my case, since I was a kid. Now, I went through extensive hematology tests in my 20s, and the very expensive hematologist said that I had a fundamental genetic blood anomaly. Okay. And then I developed endocrine disorders down through the years. And doctors were never anxious to want to deal with it. They brushed me off and pushed me away. And that has turned out pretty well because I was forced onto my own initiatives. And I'm doing okay, considering, all right. But when I have a blood test taken and I get the printout back and it says all tests are normal, they're lying to me. Okay, so the medical profession is run by factions, and it's separate from the healing professions, which are chiropractic, nutrition, reflexology, okay, and the more natural and less invasive forms of healing. So medicine is run by factions. Academia, having that peer review publishing, is run by factions. The political scene is run by factions, all right? Religions have been divided into denominations and covenants and philosophies, and they're run by factions, right? So where are the people who aren't part of a faction? They're the wannabes. They're the wannabes. They're the ones that are looking around saying, what's going on here? All these people divide and conquer and protecting themselves from each other. I thought we were a human race. What's going on here? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Well, that's exactly true. And right now we are in the middle of 3 simultaneous predicaments. And what I learned from conflict analysis is that when you're in 3 simultaneous predicaments, that is chaos. Okay. The first predicament is that our banking system has hit its numerical limits, and it's either going to crash or replace or something. You know, the financial system isn't reaching everybody, and it's making the rich richer and the poor poorer, and it's not working. Okay, that's one predicament over here. The second predicament is that corporate profiteering defense contractors keep coming up with ways to kill the population because they have this opinion that there are too many people and people need to be culled. So how are they culling people? Well, we have serial wars and we have these bio weapons, and right now we're dealing with a disease, a virus that has everybody in lockdown. That's a predicament. Okay, that's a predicament. All right. The third predicament is that the factions that want war and the factions that want peace are head to head, butting head to head. And it's never who we always thought was for what. The Democrats were always the ones who wanted peace in the past, but now they're the ones wanting war because that keeps their people employed. And the Republicans are the ones who always wanted war in the past, but they're the ones who want peace now because there's just been too much war, too much instability, and too many problems. So we've got war and peace, the virus, and we've got the economic system all going to hell at one time. That's chaos. That's chaos. So what we're left with is keeping our head down, not getting ourselves in any particular trouble, because the nail that gets popped up will get hammered back down. Okay, you understand there's no way to get away with anything right now. And there is also underlying the virus problem that apparently is being used, or at least as a distraction, to deal with for certain elements of the military to deal with the deep underground military base problem. The deep underground military base problem began back in the 50s during the Cold War, when the nihilistic philosophy that said the United States and Russia were going to get into this all-out nuclear war was at its height. And I was in high school during those years, and I remember there was a movie On the Beach back 57, 58 that had me scared that I thought I was never going to be allowed to grow up or have a family of my own. Okay. There was this belief in war. And that's when the drug running started up. Zapata Oil Company became a place for the drug money to start, and the drug money got entangled up with MJ-12 and the space, the UFO question, and the National Security Agency, NSA. They started keeping things secret about UFOs, and so anything having to do with space that wasn't official had to be underground. And so, since we're worried about fighting a nuclear war with Russia, we began tunneling underground in the 50s. And we tunneled underground, and George Herbert Walker Bush brilliantly figured out how to funnel the money from the no, I don't have it. from the drug running and gun running, especially the Iran-Contra stuff, into the black budgets, the covert ops to build these cities underground. I understand there were originally 140 cities underground, and they were connected by trains that went across continents and so forth. But the problem was that those cities were run on a fascist ethos of slave labor. Fascist ethos of slave labor. And the way they kept to it was by child sex trafficking to keep the workers satiated sexually, if not in other ways. So the child sex trafficking became covered over with the label of UFO abductions. UFO abductions. And as David Paulides has pointed out, the map of disappearing Americans in North America matches the map of the underground, deep underground military bases, so that people have been kidnapped and taken underground going on a half a century now. And this is the operation that is being conducted since President Trump signed the executive order to specifically make child sex trafficking a federal crime and illegal and punishable in a military tribunal down at Gitmo. All right. You know how long that was. That was just a year or so ago. And so 1 million reservists up to the age of 60 years of age have been reactivated. They didn't tell us, well, they say it's for the virus, but what we're hearing is the stories of nurses who are now confronting the children and the slaves, 35,000 children who have been rescued out of those deep underground military bases. And so everything has kind of come to a stop. Everything has come to a stop, and not just because of the viruses, and not just because the banking system has hit its ultimate limits, okay, and not just because the political system is in an impasse, but because we have to think about what has happened underground to the slaves and people taken down there. Am I making sense? All right. Now, you and I, who are sitting at home with our internet and our lights are on and we have power and we're comfortable, we're stuck at home, okay. But you have no idea of the suffering of those children, of the suffering of the people who've been enslaved in order to build and produce those underground catacombs. So we are at a complete and full stop. And this is a time for reflection about when things do start up again. All right. By what set of values are we going to proceed? Is it going to be the cynical, imperial ethos of treachery, protection rackets, and divide and conquer, which exist in the Talmud and the Quran, and can be implied or inferred into the Bible because that's how some Christians have behaved? Is that what we're about to accept for a new world where slavery is being eradicated? Okay, I want to step back now. I talked a little bit about the authorities of the galaxy at the galaxy level, but we have an authority at the planetary level. And that planetary authority has a name. Jehovah is a term which in recent times has been employed to designate the completed concept of Yahweh, which finally evolved in the long Hebrew experience. But the name Jehovah did not come into use until some years ago, years after the time of Jesus. That's the Urantia book. Here's the Bible. Psalm 83, verse 18. And this is a King James Bible. It's the same in every Bible. That man may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. Okay? Book 2, the Bible. Book 3, the Oahspe. You've never heard of it, have you? Of course not. And in the Oahspe, I'm just here in the index, and we have a column and a half of scriptures specifically about Jehovah. So Jehovah, whoever he is, whatever he is the planetary sovereign, is the guy in charge of this world. Now, he comes in here under Voyagers 2 as being part of the fallen Anu Elohim. Okay. He's not considered righteous. Now, how can that be? That can be because the other guys, what are they called? The Elohim of the Galaxy Authority, wrote the Emerald Covenant Treaty that says there are superior races and inferior races, and it's the job of the superior races to call and police the inferior races. And Jehovah said to that, hell no. He said, hell no. He said, no, you don't kill people, just be good people just because they don't believe the right thing, or they aren't part of the correct faction. That's not the reason that you kill people. And so Jehovah set up an alternative secondary covenant, actually 2 of them. All right. And the first one, of course, was Judaism. And in Judaism, he specified behavior, okay? You be good. You do good things for good people, and you don't do bad things, and so on. And when your physical life is over, we'll save your memory and save your identity to our computer backups. All right, so when you live again, you can have your memories back. All right, then he had a son. Well, actually, there's the Alpha and the Omega that were only begotten because he and Shekinah split up and got divorced. So Jehovah produced Alpha and Omega on his own without a mate, which means that Alpha and Omega were 2 halves. And Alpha was completely right brain dominant, and Omega is completely left brain dominant, which means his mind operates in a sequence of causes and effects toward objectives. All right. So it was Omega who became Jesus, whose actual name is Michael. Okay. It was Omega who became Jesus, and what did he do? Bless his heart. He analyzed everything that his father had done, and he looked for the intentions behind it, and he criticized the intentions, which was exactly what was needed. That's perfect, because it isn't enough to just be law-abiding. You also have to look at the intention of the heart in doing an act to see whether your intention is what is going to produce or manifest good. All right. So the Beatitudes of Jesus took the laws of Jehovah into another dimension of intention and creating good outcomes. All right. And people who simply follow those guidelines have an alternative form of ascension that's called salvation, because Jehovah flipped off the galaxy who wanted the kind of fascist domination that we have seen unfold before us over and over and over and over again in the guise of each successive empire, whether it was Sumer or Babylon or Assyria or Greece or Rome or Tartary. Each empire had the same galactic belief in the smart guys beating up on the other people. The I'm righter than you sickness, the we're righter than them sickness. And being righter, as Jesus pointed out over and over, is not always the point. The point is creating harmony, being able to overlap your interests and create a harmony. And that is what is yet to happen in this world, because the authorities are still fighting themselves. The authorities are still fighting themselves. What are our options? I think for me personally, because I read the OSB, all 900 and some odd pages of it, back in the 60s. But for me, it's time to go back and read this again and see how it dovetails with the Urantia book and the Bible. And what I'm saying to people who want to get into the mind of God, all right, you can't do it by following a faction. Factionated thinking is the disease of fascism. Let's not do that. All right. And in order to not do that, we have to have a larger perspective than just. Now, I love the Bible. Okay. The Bible is good. It is wonderful. It is helpful because it has taken the ethos of law and the ethos of the Beatitudes, the attitudes that lead to long-term success, not short-term success, not greed, not usury, not exploitation, not slavery, none of that, but long-term harmony and long-term success. The Bible is the best summary, the best summary of the ethos. You learn the Bible first, but then you got to go beyond that. There is no human in the world can get educated out of one book. That's crazy. That's crazy. And these evangelists who keep telling me that if it's not written in the Bible, it doesn't exist. Hey, come on, get a grip. So we have the OSB, which is a completely different set of terms, but Jehovah has his name on it, so we're going to look at it and see how it plays out. And we're going to examine our own behavior, whether it's short-term rule following or long-term building on and working toward the expectation and the manifestation of creating harmony. And this means we have to get along with people who have different ideas in their heads than we do. Because after all, here in third density physical, what works out is your actions, is your behavior, is your expressions, is your attitude, all right? And so if we work on ourselves to make ourselves harmonize more easily with other people, okay, then we're also working on our long-term objectives of harmony. We're at an absolute impasse right now. We don't know whether the election will even take place because, as Judicial Watch is pointing out, the election system is being rigged and meddled with by including voters who are not legitimate voters, by expanded voter rolls, by false identities, by mail-in votes. The left is so upset about having lost the 2016 election that they will go to any end, any means, any method to manipulate or rig the voting process right now. All right. And add to that, we don't know the mortality rate of the virus, who it's going to affect, who is not going to affect most. It looks as if it's mostly going to affect the coasts where the voting system is most precarious. Who knows if there's even going to be an election just because of the vote rigging that is going on in front of everybody. All right. We don't know how long the fiat money system is going to last. There has been a run on the people who sell gold and silver coins, but the rich people who have it all still have it all. And many of them are Satanists who either profit by or engage in the child sex trafficking and the human trafficking that's underground. And so some number of wealthy celebrities and wealthy politicians stand to be indicted and prosecuted for those crimes of kidnapping and torturing children. We don't know who's going to be left. We don't know who's going to be left from the weather instability, the raging storms, and all of the other apocalyptic stuff. We don't know. We will only be able to know what to do when this crisis is over. So in the meantime, let us take care of ourselves so that we can care for others and take care of those that God sends to us to care for. Because when people arrive in your life, generally it's for a reason and a purpose. There's no such thing as a coincidence. All right. Now, taking care of ourselves. Many of us have purchased these sealed packets of long-term storage food that are in the closet. It's time to take that stuff out of the closet and figure out how to use it. It's time to not consume expensive, chemical-laden food. It's time to just keep your diet very simple. Get your diet back to simple, okay? Make sure your water's clean. Make sure, if you can afford it, have an air cleaner in the house. Detoxing from the fluoride in the water and the chemicals in the food and the heavy metals in the air. There are 3 ways I know of you can detox. There's detox tea, there's foot baths and foot patches that will suck the pollutants out of you. And there's getting in a full bath with a half a cup of baking soda, but that takes a long time. You have to do a lot of that. So we have to detox ourselves to take care of ourselves. We have to keep our home more than usually clean, the whole house. Yes. Because we're homebound, we can't just run outside whenever we want. And I notice about the clouds, when the air is nice and clean and the sky is blue, that doesn't mean that there isn't something in the air. But just after a heavy wind, go outside. Just after a heavy rain, go outside. Other than that, be moderate and judicious about going outside because of the chemicals in the air. See what I'm saying? We have to take care of ourselves and our children. With respect to our children, now that the kids are home, it's a good time to see what the kids know. Test them to see whether they can add and subtract and multiply and divide, whether they know how to write in cursive, whether they can print, whether they can write a letter, whether they can tell a story. You know that the TV that runs on 5G is blasting you all with microwaves and radiation. Now, I had 5G here for a whole year. Comcast put it in last year. And the result was I lost my hair and I became very tired like I am today. So I was able about a month ago to talk them into setting my service back from 5G to a lesser service, a slower service that only cost about half as much as the 5G. And so now my hair is coming back and I'm recovering and I'm sitting up straight and feeling better. The 5G you have to run your television is not a healthy thing to have in the house. Okay. Does that make sense? But oh my goodness, we've got plenty of time. All right. That's basically what I came here to say today, is that we are at an impasse. We cannot make any decisions, and any movement we make to go here, there, or somewhere else is possibly putting yourself in danger because the authorities want everybody to stay put right now. I'm not here to argue one way or the other. That's cranberry with raw beet juice instead of lipstick, okay? For the people who have come down with this virus, my empathy goes with the family. Because of my own health practices, I haven't had a flu bug in memory. That's got to go back 20 years. I have never had a flu shot. I have never had a mammogram. I have never had a colonoscopy. Okay, I just don't go for those procedures, and I keep my body intact and as clean as possible. And this is what we need to teach our children, to be as clean as possible.
Say Emily?
Yeah.
What does the colonoscopies have to do with something?
Unnecessary testing, tests, procedures, protocols, doctrines, dogmas, rules, top down. We're being used as experimental animals in a scientific system of treatment by intrusion, either by chemical intrusion or physical intrusion. And I just have a problem with that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. We have to protect ourselves now. Protecting ourselves and our home and our family has become number one. But the confusion that we have in the public mind is total, because we're not taught in our history classes that we live in a galaxy dominated by factions. We live in a galaxy dominated by treaties in which one race is seen as superior to the next by virtue of their bloodline, by virtue of their ideology. Never mind their behavior. Well, I don't know of any lawful agreement in which behavior is irrelevant to the outcome of the agreement. And if you look at the commercial treaties which have been signed since the Greada Treaty was signed in 1954 by President Eisenhower, none of those commercial treaties define humanity or define the fundamental rights of the world to life, of human beings to exist. What?
They have already manipulated the words to mean something different anyways.
Yes, they've manipulated the words, and they've created the Maritime Admiralty system of rule baiting to overrule and overtake the common laws that we have. And this is why our system of governance, the United States government, is not innocent of treachery and protection rackets and divide and conquer. And so our government has a measure of blood guilt on it.
We don't have a government.
Okay,
Yep.
So the people who are running the protection rackets and running the divide and conquer and running the criminal parts of the government,
The criminal cabal.
the
Yeah.
criminal cabal, have to be taken out of power and out of authority. How does that happen when the mainstream media is owned by those people? All the information we get on the television is pure cabal propaganda, just as it was in Russia during the Soviet regime there, and as it is in China now that they have a Soviet regime. How do we get the mainstream media down? Is it possible? Could we do a class action suit, a class action antitrust suit against the mainstream media? Would that work?
Beats me. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, lawyers that work for the Bar Association work for Satan and the enemy,
Correct. Yeah.
because their mission statement is that they don't work for their clients, they work for the Queen. They work for the Bar Association and the Queen.
Right.
Yeah. And as you know, I've stood up against the Queen since I found out how I've been personally affected by MI6 and its operation to rub out and disappear members of her family. All right. Which is what happened to me and my sister, who is in Virginia. There is the matter of what do we stand for. Now, I stand for the creation, for the world as it is biologically configured. I don't see any reason to wreck it. And what evil does, as far as I can see, is just create an enormous amount of waste. It's not novelty, it's not adventure, it's not thrills, it's not video games. Oh, aren't we having fun blowing things up? Hey, if you have to walk through the area and clean up the area that's just been blown up, it's not fun. Evil is waste. It is not adventure. And our children need to be able to recognize that. All right. So what do we stand for? Do we stand for the top-down configuration of academic and elitist arguments and pedagogy? Okay. They'll talk to you over your head and explain the whole system to you. But they'll never say to you what the outcome will be if you interact with that system. They don't talk about behavior. They don't talk about the laws of cause and effect. So how can we stand with or for an academia who's more interested in head tripping than they are in maximizing the strategies of harmony, not only in chemistry, they know chemistry pretty well. They know physics to some extent till they get to astronomy, and then it's all doctrine and dogma again. Okay, but how about harmony in social relations? For a fact, I know that the phenomenology philosophy is the same in public policy as interactive management, and the same in computer science as neural networks. But these methods are utilized as competing vocabularies, and they are not cross-pollinated. With factions, what we have is competing vocabularies, okay? The gangs have their language, and the liberals have their language, and the radicals have their language, and the evangelicals have their language, and the Episcopalians have their language. And so one of the things that we can do to ameliorate, lessen the fighting between factions is learn how to standardize our language across disciplines and across literal languages. Now, I know there's software to do that now. You have a little thing, and you can translate from language to language, but I don't know how accurate it is. But yes, one of our largest problems, and the problem we have between us and our children, is that our children do not speak the language of the elders. The children, in fact, my children who are in their 40s and 50s have a problem with my language when I'm speaking calmly and sincerely. They don't get it. They don't get my language, and they're in their 40s and 50s. All right. My grandchildren are afraid to talk to me. I think they probably think I speak a foreign language completely. All right. Now, the ones who are literate and are reading English in books at least have a sense of subject and predicate and subject and object. But if you listen to the children on the street whose parents are working all the time, who are being taught by the communist core curriculum in school, those children do not have anything like an adult vocabulary that will serve them in an adult job. Somebody at home is going to have to teach those children the adult English language of the American people. Now that we're all stuck at home, I remember something we used to do at home that was just so much fun, and we really enjoyed it when my youngest two sons were small. We used to sit together in the living room and read books to each other. We used to read books to each other, adventure books that were, they were kind of exciting. Well, we read Lord of the Rings, and I forget some of the other adventure books we read back and forth in the living room without any television. In fact, there was never a television there. The television is the eye of Satan, and it has 5G to pollute your body, and it's really nothing to have in a house. But, who am I to speak? Just the older generation. So we are immobilized in our predicaments, 3 of them: the money situation, the virus situation, and the political situation. And the political situation includes the problem of human trafficking and drug running and gun running, which have paralyzed the government. almost completely, and which many of the government, civil servants, and elected officials are involved in. And many of them expect to be indicted. And some of them, I guess, already have been indicted. But the matter of indicting public officials is a matter of great concern. And so it's being done behind the scenes, the way the emptying out the deep underground military bases is being done behind the scenes. My goodness. I think we're going to get through this. The people who stand for only knowing what's true and not complicating your perception set with a lot of fantasies and a lot of gaming and a lot of wishing. If you stick with what's true and stand with the people in public life who point out what is true. George Webb is doing a monumental job in pointing out what is true and where the human trafficking, gun running, drug running cabal are operating. All right. He's doing a yeoman's task. Judicial Watch is doing a yeoman's task, pointing out how the departments that are supposed to be authorities in enforcing law, the Department of Justice and the FBI, have failed to follow their own laws, so that they have allowed the corruption into human trafficking, pay to play, and blackmail to flourish. Blackmail has flourished under Jeff Epstein and the CIA. Okay, we the people have a problem. We can't fire those public servants. And the elected officials who are charged with firing public servants who are embedded in corruption, some of them are all either embedded in corruption themselves or they're being blackmailed. How do you blackmail a public servant? You put them in a compromising situation with an underage sex object and you take pictures. And that's what Jeff Epstein was doing. He was doing that with practically all the leaders of the Western world. And so he has the blackmail records to control the votes of just about anybody in the US Congress and in the UK Parliament. Well, bully, bully, bully for Jeff Epstein. I don't know if he's still alive or not. There's the story that he's alive and there's the story that he's dead. But now that we know that blackmail and undercover control of legislators is what is true, we need a constitutional convention to examine our election system and to put it back to paper ballots that cannot be falsified, and to cease the gaming of the American people as if our governance is a matter of cabal preferences. They have their preferences. I'd like you to notice whether you are hearing interruptions in this tape today. And the reason I'm asking that is I notice when I mention a word that falls in the CIA lexicon of censorable words, a word like cabal, that quite often there'll be an interruption in the tape just about that time. How do you like that? Hey, Steve, I think we're ready for a break. You think so?
Are you?
Yeah. It's
just
time
a break then, or?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see who sticks around. I'm going to cut off my friends at Facebook, and I'll come on over to peoplesinternetradio.com and see what questions we have over there. I'm looking here at Facebook, and I don't have any questions here. So I'll log off here at Facebook, and we'll see you at People's Internet Radio.